Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Smith with GrowthSource Coaching, and I'd like to welcome you to another Business Transformations on Air. Today we're going to be talking about marketing strategy and some of the things that I've learned that ultimately make the strategy work. And we just thought this was going to be something that people would really want to understand so they could get a better ROI for their marketing efforts. Now, I'm going to introduce Matt from Viral Marketing, who's helping me host these. And Matt, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate you having me. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the story of kind of how we came up with this topic and what led to it, just so that the folks know it's the 4 principles of every marketing strategy that actually works, and that seems to be the struggle. You know, we were just talking about a social media strategist that you ran into at an event, and talking about a lot of things, and there's a lot of activities and a lot of things that are very time-consuming, but do they really have an impact? And that's what we're talking about today. So tell me a little bit about the story of how you came up with this topic and why we're talking about it today.
Okay, what led up to this was about a week and a half ago. I was invited to a company's networking event, and they asked me to say a few words, as I do every month when I go. And so this month, I decided to talk to everybody about how to really understand whether your marketing is working or not. And if you're not getting the payback, if you're not getting the results, what do you need to look at to make sure you can get it work? Because it will work if you do some fundamental things correct. And I got such a good kind of response out of that. I thought, this is something that more people would probably get some benefit out of. So I thought this would be a great way to have an on-air show about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's dig right in. So what's the number 1 principle of every marketing strategy that actually works?
There's 4 of these now. So if you're watching this, take some notes. You can always watch the replay, but quite honestly, what you hear today, if you go back and apply it to what you're currently doing in your marketing strategy, I guarantee you're going to see some things that are going to make you want to change. So write them down and then go out and apply them, and you'll get the best results for the time you're spending watching the show here. All right, the first principle is make sure your business is relevant to the market you're serving, and it's got some area of distinction about it. Okay? Now, when I say relevance, what I'm really talking about is, are you filling a stated need? Is there a part of the population in the market you're serving that actually needs what you're offering, and they recognize that you're an authoritative source that can provide it to them at the level they want it? It's relevance. If what you do is just absolutely wonderful, but nobody in the market sees a need for it, then you might as well not spend any money trying to market it. So relevance is so important. You've really got to check that out. Now, after that, you've got to look at all the people that are in the same marketing sphere as you are, your competition. And even if you only have 1 or 2 competitors because of the speciality of what you do, take a look at reasonable options. People have options in terms of solving problems, and every business that offers a product and service is really offering a solution to somebody's perceived problem. So make sure that what you're doing is some way different and distinct from the rest of the crowd, or the only thing you'll compete on is price. So that's real important to understand. And I'll give you a hint. When you're looking for differentiation or distinction of some kind, it's not about the product and it's not about the service. It's what you do to engage that client and meet their needs and do things in such a manner that they just feel like they've gotten the best service, the best experience, the best interaction from you that they could have got from other people they chose. That's going to be different from different businesses, but the point is, if you don't know what that is and you're not talking about that, nobody knows about it.
Yeah, and I think I'm sure there's a segment of business owners or executives that really genuinely feel like their business is the best in their field, but there's a lot of others that maybe they struggle with that mentality and they feel like they're competing on price a lot because maybe they're selling a product or a service that's been commoditized. Yes. I think it's really important, and like you said, you look at your competitors and you look at what you can do or what you're already doing differently that you can present to the marketplace, because it's not just about being discernibly or obviously better. Apple is not necessarily better than Microsoft products at the actual technical specs. It's all the other stuff. It's the marketing, the packaging, the brand,
Absolutely.
The idea, the way they make you feel. It's all this other stuff.
Yes.
It's just being different, not necessarily better.
Yes, and when I see a lot of businesses as they're doing print advertising or they're doing radio commercials or they're doing other types of social interactions, digital marketing, many times I'll see them lead off with things like, we've been in business 4 years. Guess what? Nobody cares, okay? Nobody cares how long you've been in business. What they care about is, do you do things well enough that if I decide to spend my money with you, I'm not going to get burned or hosed or feel bad about the experience afterward. So you really have to almost get out of your own business owner's shoes. And believe me, that's not easy. Because for most of us, the business we have is either something we made ourselves and grew it over time, or we kind of over a long period of time, we kind of morphed into that leadership ownership role. And so it's ours. You know, it's a reflection of who we are and what we do best. And so it's really difficult sometimes to be able to actually look at your business dispassionately from the other side of the desk, from the consumer or the client side, and be able to say, what is it that I like about this? You know, if you had to do business with yourself, why would you do that? Those are tough questions, but if you get to the bottom of those, it's amazing how much differently you can interact with the clientele or the community that you're trying to cultivate to do business with you.
Yeah. And it's a really good segue into the second point, which is to know, you really have to know your ideal target market, and talk a little bit about that and how you go about the process of identifying them and really getting to know them.
The biggest single thing that you have to figure out with the clients you're targeting is what prompts them to make a decision. Everybody has an internal decision-making matrix, a series of things that they go through before they're comfortable pulling the trigger, especially if it's a large ticket item. They're buying a car, they're having their home remodeled, you know, maybe they're buying some upgraded, TV and stereo equipment. Anything that starts getting upwards of $1,000 or more is going to require a little bit of thought. And today, people go through a certain amount of steps before they're comfortable saying, yes, it's time for me to do that. Then the next step is, who am I going to do it with?
Right. Yeah, and you want to be that first person that comes to
that decision.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, and that kind of segues us into the next point, which is it's the path. You know, what is that path that brings that ideal customer to you? You know, are you really the first person that they think of once they've made that decision that they need X product or X service? Then what's the path for them to get to you?
Here's where I try to separate in the strategy the direction you're going with the tools you use to get there. So we just had a conversation before we went live that we're talking about different marketing tools. Okay, social media is a tool, and each one of the different sites could be considered a tool. Email marketing is a tool. Pay-per-click, Google SEO is a tool. There's all different types of online as well as offline tools. Doesn't mean that every single one is going to work for your business. What it means is you've got to pick those few. Sometimes it's no more than 5, no less than 3 in combination that will allow you to point your message from you, the business, to your intended client target in the cleanest, easiest way possible. That's really what you're looking at doing.
Yeah, and I know in our business, I mean, we are in the business of primarily email marketing because right now that's still the dominant medium. It's still the best tool to get our message to the audience. And there's other tools, but as you go down the hierarchy, especially in the social media world, you start getting to the point where you hear a lot of fluff and a lot of press basically about new tools, but you have to realize that they're reaching a completely different audience than you might be trying to reach. Totally. And there's no reason for you to feel an obligation to get involved with all these tools and try to put them all in your tool belt, essentially, if they're not even reaching the audience of clients that you're trying to reach.
Okay, so that's a great point. Go back to point number 2, where you're trying to figure out how your ideal customer or client makes the decision to move forward, to purchase, hopefully to purchase from you. Yeah. Part of that investigation or that evaluation really needs to be, where do they go to get information? Because here's the other scary part for businesses who are used to advertising and promoting and kind of pushing the message out to the target audience. Today, with the advent of all things you can find on the computer, on the internet, whether they're accurate or not, that's meaningless. The fact is, either a customer or a client can go out and research and find a whole host of things that they need to understand prior to coming to that decision that they're going to go forward and purchase the item. Okay? From a decision-making process, they're already 60% of the way through their own process before they ever call you or come to your store, visit your place of business. They've already figured a lot of that stuff out. They show up to you or they call you. The only reason they're doing it is to figure out if you're the one. So you've got to make sure when you set up your marketing channel and you're picking the various marketing tools that you know where they go to find information. You know, if you're in a service, a professional service, you're a CPA, you're a lawyer, and you practice a certain type of law, you've got to sit down and think about the ideal client that would need your service, and then ask yourself, if they don't know me and they don't really have anybody else that they've ever gone to for this, who are they likely to go to for a referral, for information, for just maybe where do I start? It may not be a lawyer. It may not be you. It may be somebody else in their community that they've developed a relationship and a trust with that they would start that ball rolling. And, of course, you've got to figure out how to be somewhere in that lineup before they get to making the decision to go do business with someone else so you can have a little bit of influence on that decision. So you've really got to think about who my clients are and how are they going to find my product or service if they don't know me first.
Yeah, and that's kind of where, so everything that we're doing here, everything that Viral Marketing as a company does, a lot of what you do for your own personal business, your coaching business, and the reason why we're doing these live events is all the same reason. You're trying to get content into the hands of people that are not ready to talk to you yet. And you're trying to get them, you're trying to catch them in that 60% of the funnel, essentially, where when they're not talking to you, but they're making a decision, and you want your message heard without you actually having to get on the phone with them because they don't want to get on the phone with you yet, but they want to hear from you.
Absolutely, and that's why in telemarketing, for example, that's another marketing tool. But as a tool, that is losing steam. It's been losing steam for a lot of years. Now, there's still industries that do it because it really just boils down to how many times you want to dial a phone, and eventually you'll pick up somebody who's maybe you catch them at that right moment, okay? But for most of us, it doesn't really work like it used to or like we think it should, because having a conversation with a proprietor, somebody that's going to offer that, and having to decide to move forward all while you're in a face-to-face interaction or phone-to-phone, that's really scary for a lot of people. They don't want to do that. That's why they're on the internet looking at stuff. They're on Facebook reading, the stream that goes by, the posts, the things. They're trying to figure out who can I trust to even have this conversation with, because I don't want to get in a situation where I'm having to make that purchase decision when I'm not ready.
Yeah, and that's another good segue, because to me, one of the ways that you build that trust is we talked about this earlier, is you have to know who your client is, because that's the only way to actually speak their language, and that's really the fourth principle that you've got, which is you have to know your message, you have to know exactly what you're saying so that you're saying the right things to the right people.
Let's back up, and I'll fast forward through this, so this last one's really impactful, because quite honestly, this last principle, if you don't get this right, the first three aren't going to matter. You have to know who you are, what you provide, why it's important, who wants it. You have to know that ideal client's decision-making process, how they make decisions, and when those are likely to come about. Then you have to figure out from a marketing tool and a channel standpoint, what 3 or 4 marketing tools do I have to operate simultaneously, okay, in order to get myself positioned in front of that ideal client at the right time. Now, just think of it as a pipe, and there's water going through it, and the water is your message. What kind of water are you sending through that pipe? What kind of message are you introducing those potential clients to that's going to make them sit up and take notice? I mean, right now, the messaging, commercial messaging from all different businesses and all different tools, radio, TV, mobile phone now, all of this stuff is just getting overwhelming to the point where, as humans, we've just learned how to tune out most of it. We walk through our days with stuff playing in the background, stuff on the radio as you're in your car, you're listening to CDs, you're listening to stuff that you've piped in or that's coming over the commercial airways. You're seeing signs when you're going out to lunch, all this stuff. Most of us don't even see that anymore. We've conditioned ourselves to completely blank it out, for our own mental self-preservation, basically. I mean, you take in all that stuff and react to it. So our jobs as business owners is how to figure out how to craft a message that's going to get somebody's attention, wake them up, get them to get out of that mental funk and say, ooh, that's something I've been looking for. I better listen to this because this might be what I've been looking for. Yeah. You have to figure out what you're going to say that's going to get people to be willing to engage. And that's the big difference between push and pull marketing. Pull marketing lays the foundation so that people will want to engage with you. They want to find out more. They want to read your blog. They want to watch a video you did. They want to read some content on your either website or maybe on your LinkedIn page, whatever you have out there that you're displaying. Whereas the push is just hit them, hit them, hit them, hit them until they go numb and give up.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. So in the people that you deal with and the clients that are in your coaching practice, you know, there are a lot of business owners that are managing an entire team of people where they could be potentially, you know, far removed from the customer, and same thing for the executives that you coach, you know, manufacturing industry, you know, large companies, logistics companies, all these kind of, you know, heavy industry type of companies where the executives themselves are not necessarily in active, regular contact with the end users or the end clients. Yes. Like, how do you keep? What are some practical things you can really do to kind of keep your ear to the ground, essentially, to even know what language your client is speaking, the people that you're actually trying to sell your product to?
Okay, here's how I'll explain this, and I'm going to borrow a term from a mentor of mine who introduced me to this, I don't know, maybe a year ago, and it's just stuck with me ever since. He told me that regardless of the size or the complexity of your business or where you happen to be, whether you're at a director level, department level, you're the guy in the corner office, the woman that heads the whole thing up, okay? He goes, if you're ultimately in charge of the performance and the results that company drives, he said there's two things you never give up control over. You can outsource a lot, you can delegate a lot, but the two things you never give up control of is your marketing strategy and the disbursement of funds.
Okay.
Because the marketing strategy, that's what drives revenue into the company.
Yeah.
The disbursement of funds is what causes money to leave. You can delegate and oversee and monitor everything in the middle, but those two things you have to be really clear about. So when you're talking about your marketing strategy, you've got to be able to know what parts of your business you need to check in with on a regular basis just to monitor, just to make sure that you're on track. Your customer service area, they're the ones that are taking phone calls and handling issues and following up. They're a great place to find out what's the chatter out there. Okay? If you have somebody on your team that's doing social media, they should be out there monitoring the conversations to find out what people are talking about or what they're complaining about. One of the things I tell a lot of my clients how to do when they're trying to figure out what the message ought to be, I tell them, go out to some of these review sites, you know, like Yelp or Angie's List or TripAdvisor, any of those ones where people can actually go on and write reviews. Go through your competition and look at 30 or 40 of them. Don't look at the 5-star ones. Look at the 1, 2, and 3-star ones, because those are the ones where people are saying, hey, I might have liked something about your business, but this part really made me mad. I'm not coming back here. You start taking note of those things, that's a great way to look at your own business and say, gee, are we doing that?
Yeah.
If we're doing that, we need to find a way to stop it and then tell everybody else that we don't do that. So really tapping into those random conversations out there, plus your own client base, is a great way to stay in touch with, are you meeting the needs you're promoting? The worst thing you can get into is be in a business where you're promoting a lot of really great stuff and you're really good at getting that message out there, but you don't deliver it. And so you get people that buy from you one time, and they never come back.
Yeah, you definitely, that goes back to the messaging, and you might be able to come up with the most compelling messaging, but if your business itself can't back it up,
that's right.
You're putting yourself in a position where you can't, either you have to bring the business up to the message, or you have to bring the message down to the business to where it's really at, in order, because the only time you're going to get great response from people and grow by referral is you have to deliver unexpected value. So you have to set your expectations here and then deliver up here, however that's defined in your business.
And that can also go back to the first point we were talking about, which is the relevance and the distinction. If you can't deliver on whatever promise or whatever message you've left out there that people say, well, okay, for that I will buy from you, then you've got a problem. And sometimes if it gets severe enough, it can take you 3 or 4 times as much time and money just to get it back to level. Just creating that perception that they're not everything they say they are. Okay, once that becomes market-wide, and with social media today, I mean, stuff can grow like wildfire if people start getting the idea that, gee, I tried them and they weren't everything they said they were. So it's real important to maintain that brand integrity. Otherwise, what you're promoting is actually to your disadvantage.
Yeah. Yeah, and going back to the social media strategy and kind of what kicked off this this topic. So I think one of the things that people really struggle with, in dealing with like what marketing channels do I get into, what tools do I use, is how do I really know if this is being effective? How do is this even trackable? Does this actually link to sales? And I know you wanted to go into a little bit about how you really track your ROI when it comes to marketing. And let's go through those things real quick. So we talked about, start with marketing as a process and not an event. And what does that really mean to your average client who's a business owner or an executive of a complex, heavy industry type business?
Okay. When you say marketing is a process and not an event, what that means is marketing is something that is a continuum. It should be running as long as your business is running. Doesn't mean you have to do the exact same marketing tactic every single month of the year, but your pipe flow of your messaging and the things you're putting out there and the way you're engaging people can never stop. It needs to be consistent. And one of the things I see with people, especially in businesses where they're trying to market and provide the service as well, they get into these feast and famine deals where they're so loaded up because their marketing has worked, and now their schedule's full. They're providing 100% capacity of what they can do. So what do? They stop the marketing. 3, 4, 5 months goes by, and all the contracts are complete, all the work is done, and there's nothing else coming in the pipe. The pipe's empty. So now you have to start up again. Now you have to keep doing it until you get enough traction for it to start paying you back. So you have to figure out a way to keep your marketing going all the time. You can't stop it, because stopping it kills it. It's a continuous process, and the best way to look at that is, if I'm going to run a business, I'm going to be a CPA, I'm going to be a general contractor, I'm going to run an auto repair place, I'm going to have a manufacturer that produces lighting fixtures. Whatever I choose to do, first and foremost, I'm the business owner of a marketing company. Because if nobody knows what I do and they don't understand the value of what I do, I'm not doing any business. So it's got to be consistent. Okay, that's the first principle right there. If it's not consistent, you're not going to get the return because you're not staying in the game long enough.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very difficult mental adjustment to make for a lot of people, especially you talk about. I think in the E-Myth model, the technician, the person that's really, really good at actually delivering the service, and then they go start a business. And I know you deal with a lot of people in your coaching practice that's their situation. That's from the outside looking in, it seems to me like that's the person that probably struggle the most with the transition to viewing themselves as a marketer that owns a business. Yes,
and especially if you're really good at what you do. Okay, you've had a number of years, maybe a larger company, or you have a natural affinity for the craft that you practice. It's really difficult to mentally take that craftsman hat off and put the business owner hat on and start thinking, because you will think differently. You will think more strategically. You will think more long term. You will have a different approach to serving up the craft that your business has to support.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to make that mental adjustment, because in the craft side of it, marketing doesn't have to fit in there. I mean, you're providing a service, you're doing computer work, you're building a product. The marketing is only important when you're responsible for generating revenue to keep the company going.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to start thinking differently. Otherwise, marketing just becomes, well, gee, I need something before Christmas comes around. I'll crank up the SEO.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
No.
I wish it did, but yeah. So, and the next point, going back to tracking your ROI. So, and it comes back to the same thing. A lot of this is, disciplines and rituals and mindset. But the second part of tracking your ROI that we were talking about earlier is just making sure that you're actually evaluating the process like all the way through. So marketing itself is the process. The evaluation and really tracking the ROI needs to be done all the way through. You can't do the evaluation just piecemeal whenever you feel like it.
Absolutely. Every time you choose a marketing tool, okay, so if for those of you that are watching this or you're watching a replay of this, if you don't get anything else from this video, remember this. Every single marketing idea or concept or program that somebody wants you to buy into, think of it this way. It is a tool. It's just like the utensils in your kitchen drawer or the hammer and the nail or the hammer and the screwdrivers and everything in your toolbox out in your garage. Okay? Marketing, they're tools. And you've got to figure out what tool is the best tool for you. Once you've figured that out, because you know it's the easiest way to connect you and the client you're trying to cultivate, then the next question you should be asking yourself is, how do I measure it? What do I have to look at, or what do I have to know to tell me that it's working, or that at some point I need to tweak it? You know, I need to do something different with it to kind of fine-tune it. So if you have a website, you need to have Google Analytics tied to that website, because that will tell you your traffic, where it's coming from, what keywords they're using, what pages they're looking at, how long they're staying. It's a free tool, but everybody needs to have that on their website. That's how you measure website activity. If you're working with a company on SEO and you figured out your keywords, you need to make sure that as part of your agreement with that company that you're having regular check-in meetings, either face-to-face or phone-to-phone, and you're looking down at the information that tells you whether your investment in that SEO strategy is actually producing results consistent with how you get your customers. So, you know, Facebook is the same way. LinkedIn, sit down and ask yourself, now that I've bought into this, how do I measure it? What am I supposed to look at that's going to tell me it's actually producing something tangible that I can look at, I can evaluate, and I can make sure it's going in the right direction?
Yeah. Yeah, and because that's so much to do, and it's a different mindset than a lot of business owners or executives have, because they're either very focused on the craftsman or they're very focused on the team management if it's a larger organization. It's really something that, and it's the last point that we want to bring up here in the last couple minutes that we have, is you talk to me about really committing it in a certain way that you'll stick to that marketing and evaluation process, because that's the only way you'll see results. So what do you feel like is the best way to put that commitment down and make sure that you stick with it?
You have to commit it to paper. You have to write it down. We all get brainstorm ideas, you know, great revelations about what we need to do in our business. I went through this 2 months ago, and I finally realized that one of the marketing tools that worked best for me was something I wasn't doing with regularity because I was too busy trying to do all this other stuff I thought were great ideas at the moment.
Okay.
Once I actually wrote it down and I actually laid it out, this is what it is, this is why it's important, this is how I'm going to do it, this is who I'm going to do it with, and where I'm going to do it, and what frequency. It was about a 4-page document. Okay. Once I wrote it down and I put it aside, and purposely, next day I went back and I picked it up and I read it. I thought, okay, this is a reflection of what's been going around in my head. But until you actually look at it on paper and you read it, that will tell you, okay, this is what you bought into. This is what you thought about. Put it down on paper. Figure it out after you read it. Does it sound and look like it did rattling around in your head? Does it make sense? Can you actually orchestrate it on a regular basis? Sometimes you build these monstrosities and you realize, man, I got to bring people on board. I can't do this, you know, or the people I have now aren't trained up well enough to be able to do it. So get it on paper. Make it real. Once it's real and it's on paper, it becomes something that you can hold yourself accountable to. And that's really the bottom line, is if you're not willing to take action on any of this stuff, then we're just having a theoretical discussion here.
Yes, and that is a great way to end this particular one, because it brings up an excellent point, because all of this goes back to commitment and accountability and really getting crystal clear on what you really want and what you're willing to do to get what you want. Because there's all, like you said, you can come up with the greatest of plans, and really committing it to paper is kind of the first step in taking that commitment process, because it clarifies all the work that would actually go into pulling that off. And but like I said, the accountability and the commitment is almost another, we could do an entire discussion on that all by itself, because there's so many components that go into that. But So Steve, can you just sum up kind of what we've learned today and what's, going back to the 4 principles, what is, if you were just starting your business, if you're a young business owner, if you're in the position where you're not really sure what to do, things are going wrong, you're kind of stuck, you're not really growing, whatever the case is, something's wrong in your business, and you're looking at this as a way out to change up your marketing. What's the one thing that they can take away from what we talked about today that they can really implement?
Okay. If you're at that forefront, that startup phase, okay, and sometimes you might buy into a business and then realize that it's broken. So you may have to go to this. This works for not just startups, but for people that are looking to make real transformational, directional change in the business they have. Vet the business idea and the model. What are you doing? Why is it important? How are you actually putting it out there? And really do some research. Talk to people, look on the internet, check out some of your competition. Really make sure that what you've decided to do, there's a place for you in the market. And you can tweak it or change it or serve it up in just a manner that you can distinguish yourself from folks that may have been out there 20, 30 years doing it already. Sometimes coming in late actually has this advantage because you can actually look at all the mistakes that were made before you and go right to the things that work, while the other folks that have been in that mistake mode for 15 or 20 years are still trying to get in their heads that they need to change. So you really have to vet the idea and the model, okay? Then number 2, you really got to figure out who am I going to be selling this product or service to. Everyone and anyone is not a good answer. That doesn't resonate with anybody. You have to know who wants it, who values it, who's willing to pay you for it. Because if you can't get somebody to pay you, then you got an expensive hobby. You don't really have a business. The third thing you've got to figure out with all these marketing tools is which ones are going to be right for me. Don't try to start with a dozen of them and work them all at the same time. Pick 1 or 2 that you can really get into and develop really well, and then add on as you go. You'd be far better off than if you try to handle way too many and you don't do well with any of them. And then the 4th thing is crafting that message. Speaking that ideal customer's language, knowing what's important to them. And again, it's usually not the product or service, it's something else around the product or service, or what the product or service will do for them in their business or their lives that has brought them to the point where they're thinking about it. You've got to be able to speak that language in order for them to connect with you and be able to see you as that solution they've been looking for and be willing to take that step, pull that trigger, and decide to do business with you.
Yeah. And the good news is that these are all they're very practical, they're simple, and really it's just a matter of sitting down and taking some time out for dedicated thought.
Right.
And that will solve 90% of your problems, it sounds like. I mean, these are really things that every business owner or executive in their business probably knows the answer to already. It's really a matter of accessing what they know by really sitting down and taking some time and really putting some deliberate thought into these questions.
The best thing any business owner could do that feels like they need an overhaul in this area is just get away from their business for 2 days. Just think of it as vacation. Go find some place to sequester yourself and really start going through this stuff. And just devote your time to thinking about this, because the answers that you'll get coming out of this process will fundamentally change how you look at what you're doing with your business. And that can be worth thousands, even millions of dollars to big-sized businesses who have been investing in things that aren't really bringing them the return they're looking for.
Yeah, and just to supplement that, if you take that step and you feel like you still need like an outside perspective, I mean that's what Steve's business is, and I just want to give you a short plug. If you're in that situation, if you're stuck, if it's a business that you own or you're an executive in a larger organization, whatever the case is, like if you've taken that step and you've gotten away from your business and you've done those steps of figuring out and you've done the hard thought and you still don't have what you feel like is the answer and you need an outside perspective, that's where Steve comes in, and a business coach can help you not just take you through those questions and spur the hard thought, but can come in with a completely different perspective and maybe bring something to the table that you didn't even think of.
Probably the biggest value that I offer and provide in my coaching program that I don't really talk about is the level of awareness that I can help somebody come to, which creates these fundamental shifts in how they think. Because once you start thinking differently and you start to recognize the value of doing that, That in itself creates enough energy and focus to get you moving.
Yeah.
But until you get to that point, that awareness factor, meaning I see it, I understand it, and now I own it. Now I recognize what it's going to do for me if I simply pursue it. When you get to that full level of awareness, man, it's just so fun to sit there and watch business owners just take off. And now they're in full control of what they're trying to do with their business because they feel like they understand why it's important to do that, and they've got enough tools behind them to be able to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's and with that, our time is coming to a close. But that's a great way to leave that off because that's the kind of clarity, and once you get that clarity, you really can set the stage for some really explosive growth and just a new way of really looking at your business that will fundamentally change everything. I mean, it really is a step to a transformation. So with that, I just want to encourage everybody. I mean, we're basically here every second Thursday of the month, 11 a.m. Pacific. We're going to be doing a live event like this. A lot of these are going to be interviews with Steve's clients that actually digging into real issues and real businesses, whether it's any of the fields that Steve deals with. We're going to have a variety of guests on that are going to give you an idea of how these principles are implemented across a range of different industries because they're timeless, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. And so I just want to appreciate you, Steve, for having me on. If there's anything else that you'd like to say about how people can get in touch with you and what the next step is if they'd like to work with you potentially.
Well, if you think that this is the kind of information and application in your business that you need at this point in time, give me a call. I will spend time with you on the phone. Even if I ultimately am not the person that you want to work with, I will give you enough to point you in the right direction, which that in of itself is worth a lot. So you can call me at 949-951-9163. That's my direct office line. Or you can go to my website and you can get a little more information about the things that I have on there. And you can send me an email, or I've got contact information on there. It will provide you as well. But the website is GrowthSource Coaching. Go on there and check it out. And again, if you see things that you've been thinking about and you just know that it's time to do something about it, especially as we end 2014, we're moving into a new year, don't wait any longer. It's not serving you well to wait. If you just decide you're going to find out, if nothing else, you're going to get some clarity on what it is you need to be doing, that in and of itself will be a huge benefit to you.
Yeah, 100% agree. I would encourage anybody that's in that situation, reach out to Steve. All the information is here on the page, or growthsourcecoaching.com. Thanks so much for everybody for joining us, and we'll see you at the next live event.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matt. Take care.
Thanks, Steve.